Hi, this is I'm.
Once you know it's for real,
I know.
you're like,
Okay, let's stop. Hi, I'm Kirsten Jones,
and I'm Susie Walton.
and this is our podcast. Hashtag Raising Athletes with Kirsten and Susie.
Our passion is supporting parents and raising not only strong athletes, but extraordinary people.
Join us each week as we tackle all topics youth sports, including everything from early specialization and overuse injuries
to helping our kids feel empowered and learn how to advocate for themselves, not only in the classroom and on the court, but at dinner tables and in their communities.
We'll be talking to coaches, athletes, parents,
and anyone else who will speak to us
about their experiences with youth sports and their paths to success.
And even more importantly, their failures. Yes, we're going to get into the gritty details of what went wrong so that we can all learn from it. Teach our kids
and ourselves
how to do better next time.
Because in the words of Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. So welcome to Raising Athletes, because we love to win too.
Let's do this.
Welcome to the Raising Athletes podcast. My name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance and sports parenting coach, the author of Raising Empowered Athletes, which came out last year, and wonderful co-host to my favorite person, Susie Walton.
And I am Susie Walton, and I'm a mom with 4 sons, grandkids of 9 grandkids. I still see myself as an athlete, no longer volleyball or swimming, but a lot of pickleball and bodyboarding. So doing these podcasts are amazing. And I'm a founder of Indigo Village and author of a book, Key to Personal Freedom, How Myths Affect Our Family Lives. And so today, our 100th podcast, and we've got the one and only Coach Steve Kerr. Now, I might be calling him Stevie once in a while because...
Please do.
Because that's what I usually do. So
yes.
Okay. So anyway, so Steve and I met, well, I don't even know when we met, but the reason we met was because Stevie brought on my son Luke as an assistant coach your very first year of coaching at the Warriors, correct, Steve?
That's right.
And so I met you eventually at that game, and one of those games, and I mean, you know that saying, you had me at hello. I mean, just madly fell in love with him. I mean, this guy is incredible. I felt so blessed that my son got to start off his coaching career with you, and that you brought him on like that. And you two, the bromance between you two is ridiculous. Yeah. So
major bromance, yeah.
Major romance, you know, and your wife is awesome, and your 3 kids are incredible, and I don't know, you're just amazing. So
well, the feeling's mutual, Susie. It's it's funny because I didn't really know Luke very well before I brought him on our staff, but we had all the same friends. We knew, we had all these mutual friends through the U of A and through Coach Olson, and so I had met Luke, of course, but I didn't really know him that well. But I knew enough to know he's going to be perfect, and it was actually both of our first years coaching.
That's right.
Yeah. So I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. So it was nice to bring in somebody else who didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Perfect.
So
winning combination.
Yeah, that's right.
Amazing right. How that worked. That's funny when you look at that, like 2 inexperienced coaches just taking it and running with it. And
Yeah. And we did it right. We had Ron Adams and Alvin Gentry with us, 2 guys who had each, 25 to 30 years of coaching in the NBA. And it was such a fun year. That first year, taking over a team that was young and really talented, but hadn't won yet. And, we hadn't coached yet, and we ended up winning the championship. It literally was like a dream. And I would tell you to this day, it's my favorite year I've ever had in the entire my NBA career. I've been in the NBA almost, I guess, if you include broadcasting, like 30 plus years. And that is my favorite year because it was just magical. And Luke was a huge part of that. We just had such a great time together, the chemistry of the staff. And of course, getting to coach Steph Curry and Draymond Green, Klay Thompson. I mean, that's pretty much a gift right there. So
just added to the magic.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, we want to get into all of that, but I would love to start with the beginning of your journey, because I know you weren't like the most highly recruited kid out of high school, right? And we talk a lot about this on the podcast. And when I work with athletes and their parents, there's a lot of FOMO, like, well, they're getting all these offers and they're the top recruit. Can you talk a little bit about your journey and how you got to Arizona, and then, how that led to you, obviously, having so much success?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was different back then. I mean, I graduated from high school in 1983. Back then, most people played multiple sports, and they didn't have AAU that was year round club soccer. They didn't, it was just you played whatever was in season and then you moved on. And so I played baseball in high school. I played pretty much every sport: Pop Warner football, AYSO soccer. And I was a good athlete, but not good enough to be recruited, when I was like a sophomore, junior in high school. And I was kind of a late bloomer, but things kind of panned out for me too. I mean, sometimes things have to fall in place. And so my senior year, I had a good season, but not great. And I went through my whole season without a scholarship offer. And then I had plans to walk on at University of Colorado, where I'd applied, but no offers. And then that summer I played in a summer league in Long Beach. And it just so happened that Coach Olson was there, and he had just taken the University of Arizona job, and he was cleaning house. It was the worst program in the country. And so he literally cleaned house, and half the guys on the roster were gone. It was after the recruiting period. And so he had scholarships to offer, and I played well enough to get, like the final offer. And from there, everything has sort of panned out beyond my wildest dreams. But, opportunities come around sometimes. But I don't know. It's a good reminder to me too that everybody develops at different stages, different levels, and everybody's got a different path, different journey. You definitely have to get some luck, but you have to be prepared for that luck when it comes to.
Nice. Okay, moving on to our next topic: mental toughness, like the tools that you use. I mean, the thing about these kids today, there's just so much, like with social media and the screen, and now portals, and just like the whole recruiting thing and the FOMO, like hearing other people are getting recruited, like we talked about, and that you're not, and what's going to happen to me. And then we also have one of my biggest pet peeves: parents trying to get a hold of coaches,
right?
High school coaches, college coaches, NBA coaches, right? And trying to feed them information why their kids should be involved in whatever sport program it is. And so, like, you didn't have a lot of that going on, I'm sure. Most of us didn't with our parents growing up. We kind of did our own thing, and if it worked, it worked, and not. So what are some of those mental tools that you have developed through these years that you find are so important? And like, what can you give parents that are listening to this, like how their kids can face those headwinds when they're coming on and just getting, disappointed, or you know what I mean? So can you talk about that a little bit?
There's so much there to talk about. I mean, I really feel sorry for this generation. Our guys are obviously in the limelight as NBA players. And so they receive so much judgment and criticism just staring at their phones. I mean, it's right there for everyone. And that translates to everyone growing up, not just NBA players, but high school players. And it may not be criticism from the media, but it's just everyone's commenting, everyone's judging. You go have a bad game in high school, and your peers might comment, and then you see it on social media. And so it's I don't know how athletes do it today. In my day, it was really easy to avoid judgment and criticism because social media didn't exist. You just don't look at the paper, don't turn the radio on, and you were fine, So I don't know if there are ways to convince your young athletes, your kids, to avoid certain social media outlets, and so you can avoid the judgment, because we're all human and we all want to be respected and loved and admired. And I don't care who you are, whether you're Steph Curry or the kid on the freshman team trying to make the team. If you read negative stuff about yourself, it hurts. It does. And when people say it doesn't, they're just lying. It's just, we're human beings. And so I really think it's important for coaches and parents to try to help their kids, their young athletes, navigate that, because you can avoid it, but you got to put your mind to it. So that's part of it. I think the next part is helping kids find the joy in the game, even as you get to higher levels of competition. And that's why I love Steph Curry so much. There's never been an athlete who has exuded more joy than Steph. And yet he's playing for championships every year. He's playing at the highest level on earth. And so for all coaches and parents, like, never let the kids forget about the joy that comes with competing. And if you can embrace that part of it, then it's easier to, look past all the judgment and the criticism and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like with Steph, he wasn't highly recruited either,
No,
right? Like,
not at all. Not at all.
But he didn't stop. And that's again for parents. You don't want to like just decide that, oh my God, my kids can't. Why are they even doing this? Or get upset. Like, there's so much learning in all of that. But you gotta let and part of that mental toughness comes with allowing your child, your student athlete, your student, to go through those rough moments, those dark nights of the soul, so to speak. And then your job isn't to get them through it. Your job is to help them see how they're getting themselves through it. And then going back and saying, how did you get through that? You weren't starting this week, and you've been starting like I remember one time, one of my kids, it was Nate, and he wasn't starting on his AAU 12-year-old team, 13-year-old team. And, the coach had a kid playing the same position as Nate. So his kid was starting, which was, as it was. And he wasn't happy about it. But his dad told him, listen, there's very few players that are starters their whole career. This is such an opportunity for you to learn to come off the bench and be ready. And so embrace that and learn from it, and don't sit there and complain about it. And it was such a good piece of information for their dad to share with him, because, he played through Princeton, he played in France for a while, and he didn't start all the time, but boy, he was great coming off that bench. So
I love the way you described it. It's not our job as parents to tell them how to get through stuff. It's our job to guide them and help them get through it themselves, because they're the ones, and I think that's really what coaching is about. I always say that being a good coach is a lot like being a good parent. You're not doing things for your kids. You're trying to give them perspective and help them become the best versions of themselves, so that they're making their own decisions and they're doing the things that can help them be successful. But they're the ones who are actually doing it. And I think, my parents were, they were amazing when I was little. I had the worst tantrums during sports. I was so competitive that I would literally like lose my mind. Baseball games, basketball. If things didn't go well, I'd throw the glove, I'd cry, and my parents would just sit and watch the game, and they never said anything until we got home. A few hours would pass, and I would calm down, and then they would ask me, like, well, what are you thinking about when you're crying? And they were very thoughtful about it, and but they just, back then it was so different, though. It's so funny because my parents would go to some games, but other games they wouldn't go to. And it's like now everybody goes to every game. I went to all my kids' games because I loved it so much. But I did learn from my parents to just let the coach coach. Let the kid play, sit and observe, support, but you don't have to constantly be telling them what to do, and then you help them find their own way. And that's I was very lucky to have parents who did that for me.
Yeah, yes, you were. That's really good. That's important.
Yeah. And rare.
So
I think
and rare.
Yeah. as I was preparing for this, of course, out into the family chat, I have two boys that are playing college basketball. I got their coaches texting me, you got to ask him this, you got to ask him that. And one of the things everybody wanted to know, right, which is and I think I totally agree. Parenting and coaching are very intertwined. How do you deal with big personalities? How do you deal with yourself as an 8-year-old to get the best out of your athletes when, maybe they're not doing what you need them to do?
Yeah, well, it really is about the relationship, because each one is very unique. And so you have to get to know your players and understand what they need. And Steph Curry and Draymond Green are so different. What ties them together is their competitiveness, but they're very different in their approaches and what they need from me as their coach. And so it's up to me to figure that out. And but I think what every athlete wants, every young person wants, is the truth, even if it doesn't feel good sometimes. But the truth mixed with a lot of love, and like if a player knows his coach loves him and supports him and is trying to help him be his best, then it's a lot easier to coach him hard and give him the truth. And that's I always felt that was the secret to Greg Popovich and Phil Jackson, their coaching styles. Like they were so compassionate and caring for their players. And but there was a part of us that that we were a little afraid of them. They were, which is good. It's good. It's like
PJ. Oh.
yes, like that guy's in charge, and I don't want to disappoint him. But the reason it worked is because they loved us, and you could feel that.
So
do you feel like you parented that way, and do you coach that way?
Yeah,
The same?
yeah. I think that's the way my parents brought my siblings and me up. That's how they. I was always a little afraid of my mom and dad, but I knew they loved me, and we had a great family, and they were, it was unbelievably supportive, and I try to coach the same way. I break one or two clipboards a year where I just go off the deep end. My old temper from my teenage years rears its ugly head.
Those moments are magical.
Well, the players actually kind of like it, I think. And
so do the coaching staff.
I know. Luke loved it. Luke loved it.
Loved it.
But no, I think the players want to know that we're in it to win. We are coming. We're coming hot. We're coming in to compete and win. But so there needs to be some signs of that, but also blended with some perspective. And like it even though it feels like the end of the world, if you lose, it's not. So we're going to treat it like it's the end of the world. But if you lose, then we're going to quickly veer back and go, guess what? It's just a game. So how do you find that balance within the sport? I think that's important too.
What you're talking about here, Stevie, is that Stephen Covey talks about it in his book, Seven Effective Tools, whatever that book is. So, 7 Habits Highly Effective People. Yeah. Thank you. But he talks about the emotional bank account, where you want to keep putting deposits into that relationship, because if it's if you're taking just out by setting rules, or there's another saying that rules without relationship can equate to rebellion. So it's about what you're talking about is like keeping a relationship alive with each of those players. Yeah. So then you can throw in the rules and you can get upset with them or something, but it's not gonna affect them as much because there's already a relationship intact there.
That's right. That's right. And all of the great coaches that I've either played for or watched. I went to Seattle years ago to watch Pete Carroll, who's one of my favorite coaches, and I watched them practice for 3 days. And football's that must be really hard with 60 plus players, as opposed to 15 in basketball. But you could see when they were stretching before practice, Pete was going over to different guys, checking in and, just laughing, joking, whatever the conversation was. And I do think that's a big part of coaching, is just maintaining that line of communication, but really making sure you're monitoring all your people and knowing, them knowing that you're you're aware of what's going on in their lives and their careers.
Yeah. So that moves us on about playing with joy. Like, I know that's been one of your big thoughts, since you started coaching, at least probably before. But, playing with the importance, like you keep mentioning Steph, like he plays with joy, and so how do you help maintain that with the players and yourself, through all the ups and downs of the wins and the losses?
Yeah. No, it's a great question, because I think, a lot of coaches have values, and they might be written on the wall in the gym, what their values are. You see in the weight room, only the strong survive, like whatever that means, I don't know. But, it's, you can't just have a slogan. You can't just have a value without that value or that slogan coming alive every day. That's one of the things Pete Carroll taught me. Whatever your culture is, whatever your values are, the players have to feel that. And so, we talk about joy. Our players feel joy when they come into the building every day. We're playing music. We're showing, highlights of them when they're doing well. We're celebrating the birth of their children, or the milestones in their careers. There's a ton of humor. When they come to the gym, we want them to feel joy. We want them to look forward, because it's a productive environment for them to work in. But it's also one of our key values that has to play out over the course of the season. And you can't just say, all right, I'm going to have joy today, but next 4 days we're not going to have any joy. It doesn't work that way. And so it really has to be whatever is important to you as a coach. That value, those values have to come out, and that's when the players will feel the authenticity. If I didn't feel like joy was an important part of being a good team, and I wasn't a joyful person on my own, I couldn't fake that.
No.
So I think every coach has to figure out his own values, his own personality, who he is, she is, and incorporate those values in their everyday practice, so that the players feel that authenticity, and that's kind of how the culture forms.
Yeah, that's awesome, because joy is an eternal state of being. Like, it doesn't ever leave us. Like, it's there through the anger, the sadness, the loss, disappointments. It's always there. We leave it when we move into our heads and start thinking negative things about the situation that we went through. Like, we just lost that game, or I fouled out, or whatever, and so then we leave the joy, but it's always there, so
it has to be, and whether you win or lose, and that's maybe the most important time for them to feel the joy is when you lose, and it's not easy. You come into the building, and you've lost a few games in a row. Everyone's naturally down, but you continue to celebrate accomplishments. You continue to invite family in, and understand what's going on in everyone's lives, and celebrate special moments, and play music, and you still laugh, you still have a sense of humor. I think one of my favorite seasons, or at least my favorite part of this process that we've kind of tried to adopt in Golden State, is we had the worst record in the league about 4 years ago. We had several guys leave. Kevin Durant left, Andre Iguodala left, Sean Livingston retired, Clay tore his ACL, Steph broke his hand and was out for the year. So all of our guys were out. So we had the worst record in the league, but we had a bunch of young guys who were getting better, and we really wanted to maintain that culture, and we did. And it's a source of pride for me that throughout that year we had the worst record in the league, but the guys enjoyed the process, and several of them got better and helped us win a championship 2 years later, partly because they grew so much during that one down year. And that's it's a real source of pride for us as a staff that we were able to maintain that vibe that we had even when we weren't winning. In fact, we were terrible.
That was a rough season.
It was a rough go, but it was an important season, and honestly, it helped set the table for the championship 2 years later.
Yeah.
And it's life, right? Like not everything is going to be up all the time. So I love that as a metaphor for when we're in the moment, and parents, you're in the moment and they're not playing or they're not, getting recruited or whatever is going on. You think this is it. This is all it is. And when you teach them that short-term losses for long-term gains, right? Which goes back to the culture that you obviously had where they were intrinsically motivated to be able to ride out that dark night, that long tail, but knowing there's going to be, sunshine again, that this is seasonal and that this too shall pass. That is so beautiful. When athletes can buy into that, and I don't want to get too much into it, but with NIL and the transfer portal and all of that, like it is kind of sad to see what's happening to college sports where kids are now like, oh well, this isn't for me. Clearly, I'm just going to move on. And it's I think robbing a lot of those kids the opportunity to fight through, okay, this isn't going my way. And what are you going to do about it?
That's right. That's right. Well, Phil Jackson had so much wisdom, and he used to say, "Basketball is a metaphor for life, and life is a metaphor for basketball." He'd say, "But and they really are." And another one of his favorite Buddhist sayings was, "The journey is the reward." And I love that one because, you think about it, and I don't care if you're the greatest winner in sports history. You don't win every year, and life is like that too. You have great times, you have tough times. Everyone has adversity. And so the journey is really the part of it where, if you're lucky enough to build a good life and have people who love you around you and vice versa, and there is an intrinsic sense of joy, you feel that joy even during the down times. And that's what's true in basketball is what's true in life. And that's what Phil was so good teaching us.
You make me think about like that journey. And so for you parents that are listening, that the win is just the icing on the cake. The journey is the ingredients to make the cake so you can put some icing on it, right? So it's about, with your kids playing sports, asking them like, when it's a neutral emotion level, not in the midst of the emotion, but what were 3 things that you got from that game? Like, what are 3 things you did well that game? Like, what did you learn in that game? Like, you fouled out. What could you have done? Like, what did you learn? What can you do differently next time? And then but really stay so much. I mean, high five wins and all that, but it's so more, the growth is like Phil was saying, it's like it's in the journey. And for parents to start recognizing that more with your kids and not get so caught up in
there's really not an end game. This is not an end game. This is not like, okay,
you're such a Swiftie. I already know you're a Swiftie.
I'm a total Swiftie.
I know you are. This end game. I want to be your first string, man.
I'm a proud Swiftie. I just think that so many people are looking for, like, okay, if I keep, maybe if I transfer to this school, I'm gonna get to this goal. But what happens is, and I've been really lucky to be a part of a lot of great teams and win championships, but it's not like you win a championship and then you go, okay, I'm here now that's it. Now I'm just gonna like sit for the rest of my, no, you just like, you keep living, win or lose, you keep living. And we're all kind of, we're all lifelong learners, and you want to keep experiencing stuff and keep growing. And it's just living life. But so that has to be incorporated into the process somehow, that this is not just like, okay, we're going to reach this destination and then we're good. And life doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I mean, talking about back to kids again too, like one of my granddaughters is on a club soccer team, and 2 girls have quit in the last couple of months because the parents weren't happy with what was going on with the coaching. Parents, you don't take your kids out of sports in the mid-season. They're committed to the season. They stick to the season. You may not be happy what's happening. They may not be, but they need to get through the end of the season. And then you can decide if it's a different team. But it's already happening when they're 12 and 13 years old, younger probably. But pulling kids out, let them again have that experience. That's where that resilience is going to be built. That's where that mental toughness comes. And then move on. But no more pulling out kids mid-season.
Yeah, like you have to let them fight their own battles, but you have to help them understand how to do that. So in that case, is instead of pulling your kid out, just say, "All right, well, you need to go talk to your coach and ask the right questions. And what are you upset about? Well, I'm not playing enough. Well, maybe go talk to the coach about it and learn how to have that conversation. And that's to me, that's all part of it. And the parents who are pulling their kid out saying we're going to go find another one, like you're doing your kid a disservice because they don't learn the right tools and communication skills they need to get through life, because that is life. That's how it's going to be at work, that's how it's going to be on the next team there. There's always stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
I know your kids are grown, but you had two D1 athletes and you had a son who said, nope, this isn't for me, right?
Yeah.
And now you're a proud grandfather. But we have a lot of people who would listen to this who talk about, okay, I've got one kid who's super into it and another one who's not. What advice would you have to parents and young athletes? I mean, we kind of harp on this a lot, but being a multi-sport athlete, playing an instrument, doing something other than sports, like what was your approach as a parent? And what would you advise parents, in this day and age as they're looking at the front end of the whole experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just kind of let our kids do what they wanted to do. Our youngest son, Matthew, I remember he signed up for soccer, and we took him to the first practice. I think he just wanted a uniform because he saw his older sister with the soccer uniform on. So he's like, I want that uniform. And so we signed him up. We took him to one practice. He in his first game, as play went down to the other end, he laid down on the ground and started picking daisies out of the grass. And I said, you're not really into this, are you? I think he was 5 years old. He goes, no. And I go, do you want to play? And he goes, no. I go, all right. And that was the last sport he ever played. So I was fine with that. He's now a writer, and he was writing stories from an early age and making movies on his home video camera, and that's what he loved. So we encouraged him to do that, and he's doing great. And the older two were totally into it. We encouraged playing multiple sports. I think it's great to play multiple sports and have different teammates, different coaches, use different muscles, see different games. I think they translate for each other. I think some of the best passers that I know in basketball were soccer players for a few years. Steve Nash played hockey growing up, and he was the first NBA player I ever saw who would purposely dribble behind the basket. And he took it straight from hockey because you take the puck behind the goal and you make the goal. You have to like figure out where you are, and you change all the passing angles of the puck. So he started doing that in basketball. And it's like 100%. And I asked him about it. He said, yeah, I came from hockey. So I think playing multiple sports can actually make you better in whatever one sport you end up concentrating on. So I'm a big believer in that.
I didn't know that about hockey because I don't, but I now can see Stevie doing that. Like,
Yeah.
that's amazing where that came from. So you come from a family of educators. So obviously, Steve, the importance of education. And so what message do you have for parents who, yes, school is important. Like my kid's dad always said, education's first, sports second. Like if your grades aren't happening, your sport's not happening. And so like how, and then there's kids, jumping out of college early to go play in the league. You got some 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-olds playing. Like, what is your message to parents about education and the importance of it, or how to balance it with sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's my parents were always very insistent that we, do our homework and take school seriously. My older two siblings are both academics; they both have PhDs. My younger brother and I were less academics. I was more into sports. My younger brother ended up getting his MBA, but he's in the home renovation business. So we're all very different, but I think my parents really were very insistent that we go to school and do our homework and get good grades. And looking back, you realize how everything is an education. It's not just, I always used to wonder, like,
Yes.
how am I going to use this, this geometry equation in my everyday life and stuff like that. But everything that you do, you're learning and you're building a foundation of knowledge and wisdom, and you're meeting people. And so it's all tied together with whatever you end up doing in your life. But the education part is the foundation. And so I would say, like, I became a coach. One of the things, I was an English major, and I didn't love school. I wasn't obsessed with it like I was with sports, but I became a good writer, and I use that all the time now as a coach. I write letters to my players to communicate with them, because I know that can be a more powerful way of getting to them, rather than saying something they may not remember. And I guess my point is, like, everything actually does sort of apply, from your education with whatever you end up doing, because you're just developing yourself and your skills and your personality and all, regardless of what you're studying. And it's hugely important to balance out your life.
Do you handwrite notes to them, like
No,
handwritten letters?
I write on my computer.
Oh, okay. So it's like, that's
Yeah.
so cool. But I would keep them all too. Like, that's awesome.
And what I'm hearing you say, Stevie, like, for parents out there's three main styles of learning. There's auditory, visual, kinesthetic. And so what Steve, you're saying is, not every child's or every athlete's an auditory learner. So
Right.
talking to them isn't going to be that helpful. Writing a note to them for those visual learners, and then for you that have the kinesthetic learners, actually going out, like with me, my best conversations with my four sons was I would go out and rebound basketballs, like, I'd be the shagger. So they would shoot, I would rebound, pass it out. Then I don't know how often, it's been very few times that I've actually sat on a couch next to one of my boys and had this in-depth conversation.
Right.
It's usually was in a kinesthetic form of shooting and rebounding. And so for you parents, like writing notes to your students, athletes, and leaving notes in their lunch boxes, that's so old school, by the way. Oh my God, my age just came out drastically large. But, post-it notes on their bathroom mirrors, and then the auditory learners having these conversations. But those are the best ways to reach your kids and your athletes.
Yeah, I mean, Phil used to give us books, a couple times a year on a long road trip, and what a great way to communicate without even saying something.
Because he would pick out the book for you guys, right?
He would pick out the book, and based on the relationship that he had with you, what he knew about you, he got me a couple of Tony Hillerman books, because he knew I lived in Tucson back then, and Tony Hillerman wrote a lot about the Southwest, and he got one of our players a book about the CBA, which was the old G League, and because that player had played in the CBA for a couple of years, and he knew he could really connect with it. So Phil put a lot of thought into what books he gave his players, and that act alone, even if the player didn't read the book, it was very meaningful. It's like, hey, this guy actually thought about me and gave me a book, and so stuff like that is really cool, I think.
Do you do that for your players? Or do you have, I know you write letters. Do you have other things that you do to communicate?
There's a book that I've given to a lot of our players over the years. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. And it was my favorite book when I was an athlete. It was written by a guy named Tim Galway. I think it was written maybe in the 70s.
It's an old book. Yeah.
It's an old book.
Yeah.
And every year I buy like 20 copies, and I put it on my shelf in my office. And when I see a player struggling with confidence, I will give him that book, and I'll write an inscription, and I'll tell him, like, this was my Bible when I was a player. And the book it's a beautiful book, but tennis is just the medium to get the message across. But the general premise is the author was a tennis teacher, and he went to a tennis match one time, and one of the players was cursing at himself after every bad shot. And he sat there and he thought, who's he talking to? He said, the guy's out there, you suck. What are you doing? It's like, who's he talking to? And he's like, he's talking to himself. So that means there are two of us. There's self one and self two, right? There's subconscious and conscious. And so he lays it out immediately, like, and if you're an athlete and you think too much, like I did, and immediately, it's like, there's the connection. How do I connect self one and self two? Mind body connection. So there's kind of a Zen aspect to the book. There's a psychological aspect to it. There's a simple confidence aspect to it, and it has all these great um, examples of how to connect your mind and body. And I would use a lot of them during my career to try to get my confidence back, and it was hugely helpful. So that's the one I give to my players.
There's a more modern one of that. Because there was the inner game of tennis and the inner game of golf, and then Mind Gym is a newer version of it that's got really short little stories that are great. And when I work with teen athletes, like, it's great because they're just like 2 or 3 pages, and it's the same kind of little nuggets that really help.
I didn't know that. I've got to check that out.
Yeah, we'll send you a copy. And a copy of my book too, and Susie's book. Yeah. So we have a family chat, and nobody responds to my texts except for my husband, unless there's a picture of the dog. But yesterday or 2 days ago, when I said I'm getting Steve Kerr on, my 20-year-old hit me back, like, before I'd even sent the text. I said, "What questions do you have for him?" And Parker wrote back, who's at Colgate University. They lost in the first round to Baylor. He came out of that locker room and said, "Man, that was so fun." He's like, when that 7-footer came flying at me while I was trying to shoot that 3, it was just mind blowing, right? And I loved how it wasn't. He said, I walked in the locker room, and to your point earlier, some of the guys were like, Yes, like, we weren't really expected. We were the 14, they were the 3. Like, we would have been a Cinderella story. But I love that he had that, like, moment of, oh, well. And, I took the flight home that night. The next morning, he texted me, just got back from the gym, right? Like, that's what you're looking for, right? Today's a new day. So I love that he responded, and that he asked this. He says, Mr. Kerr, what's next for you? You've done so much. You've won 9 championships, which is the highest award a coach can receive in the NBA. So now that you've reached that pinnacle, how do you want to impact the future?
Oh man, well, it's a great question. I think back to the earlier part of the conversation when I said there's no end game. I love what I do, so I'm going to keep coaching. I think that there's not, like, I'm not coaching to win another championship, although I'd love to. Obviously, I'm not coaching to achieve anything. I'm coaching because I love to do it, and it's a great life. So I'm going to keep doing that. I do have a platform, which because I'm doing media sessions every day, and I do have a pet issue, which is gun violence prevention. So I think as I continue to coach, but also even after I'm finished, I'm going to try to work on that as best I can, and try to make some sort of an impact in that field.
Yes, so much work to be done there.
So much work. It's like so much work. Well, yes. So for all the athletes and the parents and the coaches that are listening to this podcast, like, obviously they know where to find you. In the arena or on television, right? But you're just such a huge inspiration, and we're so thankful that you took the time to be on with us. We're a very grassroots podcast. You saw when my earpods fall out midway, like, I'm such a rookie on this business. The fact that, you know what I mean, like, and so thank you, because it's like you were in our top 100, and you made it for us, being our 100th on this one. So thank you so much.
I am honored. It was really fun, and you guys do a great job. So keep it up.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Okay.
So for parents, coaches, and athletes out there listening, please like and share and follow along and share this story, and allow others to when we know better, we do better. And that's the point that Susie and I wanted to start this for, is we can all help each other. It's a $37 billion business, youth sports. It's larger than the NFL. It's only getting bigger. And we need to make it fun for our kids and more fun for ourselves so we can all enjoy the ride. Let's do this.
Let's do this. All right. Thanks, Steve.
Hey, Kirsten and Matt here for the after show, this new little episode that we're starting just to talk about kind of the big takeaways and what our impressions were. And let's talk today about Steve Kerr.
Yeah. I mean, you start us off. You're the one who met with him. What was it like meeting with a 9-time NBA champion, one of the most successful and winningest coaches, as well as winningest players and NBA personalities? He's kind of done it all from commentary to coaching to playing. Tell me what that experience was like getting to talk with him and with Susie.
It's honestly easy to understand why he's so successful when you meet with him, because you can tell how he approaches everything with a passion, with a kindness, with a honesty and sincerity. And that's exactly who showed up. And, he's on the road. He's in Dallas. They're getting ready to play that night. He's making time for a friend. And the backstory, I think it was revealed a little bit, but when he got hired in 2015, his first head coaching job ever, he hired Luke, Susie's son, as his assistant coach. So they became, obviously colleagues and then fast friends. And having that relationship obviously was the door that opened for us to be able to get him on. But it was like sitting in the living room with your best friend.
Yeah. I mean, those are the things that make him such a successful coach. And when I saw watching the podcast back, it's his ability to make everybody feel comfortable, everybody feel heard. And like you said, it was just like you're talking with a friend. It felt like you two were just passing the ball back and forth. And it's because these coaches aren't great tacticians. They're great managers of people. And he seems to be able to manage personalities extremely well. And he went into that a little bit about how he develops and understands you have to have a unique relationship, and the way that he manages Draymond and Steph is going to be different to how he might manage, and compared to those two, how he manages Draymond to how he manages Steph. And what did you see as his man management is what we call it in soccer. How did you see his man management kind of come through in the podcast?
That he clearly learned from the best in Popovich and in, Phil Jackson and in Lute Olson, his college coach, and I believe even his Pally High coach, he was still very close to. So, I think there are two ways when I talk about coaching, right? There are different models of coaches, transformational coaches or transactional coaches. And it seems like he was very lucky, to have transformational parents, and then have multiple transformational coaches in his life. And I believe you only need to have one, or it's helpful to at least have one, so that you can model how you want to show up on, seeing somebody else do it. You don't have to. There isn't always for sure, I want to model myself after somebody who showed me perfectly. But, I think he's a combination of all of those great leaders. And for sure, he's a student of the psychology of understanding how to motivate people.
Yeah. And his main factor in motivating people is a word that he probably used a dozen times in the podcast, was joy. Yeah. And creating this environment of happiness and joy. And as a peak performance coach, what's your take on that? A lot of coaches in the older day are going to tell you something different. They're going to tell you that you have to rule with an iron fist, and he creates an environment of humor and joy. So what, give some background on that.
Yeah. And you see, I listened to Dan Hurley yesterday talk about he's old school, and his dad was old school, and a very, very, very decorated high school coach for dozens of years. And so he's like, yeah, we have a very, standard procedure. Doesn't make it better or worse, but it's a different leadership style. And I think he to me and my personality, I'm 100% about joy and bringing out the joy in the athlete and allowing them. I believe you do need to be, if it's going to last, it's got to come. That doesn't mean every single minute of every practice is fun and funny and we're kidding. I could like to call it focused fun. So we've got to be getting after the drill. We've got to be competing, but we can still be having fun. We can still be, hey, what's the goal? Who's going to win first? We're going to talk smack to whoever. We can put a challenge out there and be competitive, but we can also be having fun while we're doing it.
Yeah, and I mean, he discusses like how the journey and the process, and one of those journeys being his least successful season, being one of the most proud moments of his coaching career, and how he led with joy and how he led with creating an environment of still loving the process. And I mean, you think about it in like general terms, any workplace that is people are coming in with a smile on their face and want to be there is going to be a more productive workplace. And I think, yeah, what were you going to say about that?
I love that story because I think from the outset of anything, when you look at success, whether it's in finance or, music or basketball, whatever it is, people from the outset say you judge your proudest moment must have been the one where you're holding the trophy. It must have been the one and yes, those are wonderful moments. But what I heard him say is, the journey is the reward. The knowing that I get to show up every day and do this, like having that mindset. And I think that's the goal for parents, right? Is to help your kid find, okay, you may not be the best kid on this roster or in this sport, but take those tools that you're learning and you'll apply it to, building a rocket or becoming a doctor or whatever it is you want to do next that does light you up that way. And you have the tools or the curiosity to continuously get better. That's when I think you strike gold or lightning in a bottle is getting the trifecta. And just because 95% of us, the kids won't go on to play in college, doesn't mean don't do it. It means be focused on allowing them to experience it so that they can learn and grow, and then they have that in their wheelhouse of, oh, I've learned how to deal with this hardship, and now I can apply it to whatever's in front of me.
Yeah, and he does that through one thing that, living out his values. He doesn't see joy as the best way to get the best out of his players. He sees the best way to get the best out of my players is to be truly myself, and I would believe that leading with joy. And he says, like, I think one of my favorite quotes in the podcast was when he was like, only the strong survive, whatever that means, is always hung up in the weight room. And he just puts his energy out there of, I want to be happy, I want to lead with joy, and his players are going to buy into that. And speak on a little bit about his importance on, he emphasizes education, but more of how it helped him develop his English major, helped him start writing letters to his players.
So one thing when I work with athletes a lot and the parents, it's easy to say, oh, my kid's super talented and they're definitely going to get recruited. And yeah, that's a piece of it. And I know that landscape is changing, but using the academic piece, regardless of what a kid decides to major in, I think to me, it's less even about what they choose to major in. It's more about the discipline of studying and having that regardless, as he said, he's an English major. He's like, I use it every day in writing letters and, advocating for my team and negotiating contracts and, like the tools that you're going to learn in college academically or in high school, like use that as a springboard for, it may not be, you may not become an English professor or you may not use your sociology degree to become a sociologist. Like that's not the point. The point is to be curious, to be learning, and again, adding that to your toolbox that makes you more valuable to whoever hires you or wherever you decide to work, going forward.
Yeah. And I mean, it takes all of his belief, and I think what everybody's belief should be is enjoying the process, enjoying the journey. And it takes everything all encompassing, lifestyle of everything that you're learning, every outlet that you're coming from is going to be able to benefit whatever your primary focus is. If his is basketball, he took what he learned in college, in his education, and enjoyed that process and brought it into his lifestyle and into his coaching career. And I think that that's a very important and important message to be sending to people: enjoy the process and enjoy the journey.
Yeah. And I think it gets confusing because kids right now, they feel so much pressure so early on that they're like, I love the sport, but I hate the journey right now. And I hear that a lot. And because they're exhausted and they're practicing so much and they're not on one team. I have a kid I'm working with now. He's on 3 different teams in one season. And, it gets to be overwhelming. And so I'm sure there's a lot of questions around, well, is this for me then if I don't really enjoy this? Well, you're probably exhausted. So in order to be able to enjoy the journey, you also have to have, I talk about a balance wheel. You have to have downtime. You have to have time to recover. You have to have time where you're doing something that has nothing to do with your sport so that you can use your brain in a different way. You can be creative. You can be, having another hobby, even if it's not something that you can take too serious, even if it's getting up on a surfboard once a year or, mountain biking, once every couple months. Like there needs to be other outlets aside from just grinding because that you think that's going to be the answer. And I think that's the message that gets conflated a lot to kids is you got to work harder. You got to work harder. Yes, you do need to work hard. And you do need to make sure you're, taking care of the other pieces too, which part of it is, be bored, like have a day where you literally don't have anything to do and you're not on your phone. Like you're just thinking of, what inspires me? What do I like to do? Like those are the creative times and the times that really good ideas can come.
Yeah. And Steve Curry is a great resemblance of enjoying the process of having a lifestyle that isn't just, basketball centric. And I think, it makes him a better coach in that sense. I think there's a lot of players you look at that were the best player ever. You look at Michael Jordan's. I don't think they necessarily have the capability to be a Steve Kerr coach. And
right.
Because, Steve Kerr spent his whole life working for other people for, enjoying that process. So he was an unbelievable guest to have on. And it was so great to watch you and Susie get to talk to him and see you guys go back and forth and see 3 people who are so good at what they do, being able to kind of pass the ball and have such a enlightening conversation.
Thank you. I had a blast. I hope you all enjoyed listening to it as much as we enjoyed making it. And to me, it's a wonderful way to celebrate 100 episodes because that's exactly what the point is enjoying this process. We wouldn't be continue to do it if it wasn't fun. So we, as Susie and I say, even if nobody listens to this, we have fun doing it. And that's, again, that's, I think, a true test of knowing, if nobody's in the stadium, if nobody's cheering for you, are you still doing it?
Yeah. Enjoying the process.
Exactly. Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you.